Okay, so workshop group number 1. I want to thank all of the members of the workshop that helped with this. This was definitely a group effort, and it was very good discussions. And you know, like we had to answer. Well, okay, so this is what we did. Actually, it's not succinct anymore, but we started. That was our goal. A succinct. You're right. So, why systems education for all engineers? And then we. Okay. Oh, I see what I did. Okay. And then we listed we came up with 2 target categories for the audiences, and we prioritized them. I'm going to quit using the laser because I hit the wrong button. We focused on 2 specific targets, and so we have 2 charts on that. Then we listed examples of systems education, both non-SE engineering programs as well as system engineering programs with a capstone. And then we came up with a list of characteristics that the employers hoped that their engineers that they hire would have. And it turns out that maybe, you know, our industrialists, if you will, within the group said, yeah, they don't have these characteristics. We wish they did. And I think what you'll find as we go through this is that we really overlap some with workshop number 2, and maybe even a little bit with 3. So that's something that we'll have to do, Rick, at the end of this thing, right, is to put these things together. Okay, so here's our value statement. I'll let you read that. I guess maybe I will read it. Engineers competent in both systematic and systemic approaches, and we define what we mean by that. That are better able to deliver complex and interconnected components and systems with predictable performance on schedule, quality, cost, and alignment within a dynamic, uncertain system of systems environment. So we started out with like a 6-word statement, and then we added some more. And anyway, we ended up with that. And we have some recommendations, although I guess we'll go ahead and maybe talk about them, but we'll talk about them more. So we think, you know, if you look at the vision statement, there really isn't right now a value statement for system engineer that's system engineering, systems education. That's actually, right, there isn't one. So we think that maybe they should. And that promotes this position within the membership, okay, as well as other engineering associations and agencies. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. And then to help with this, we recommend that NCOSE actually provide grants or awards to support this purpose. So anyway, so that's sort of up front. Okay, so any discussions on that? Anybody thinks that it's not exactly succinct, but we think that's the value proposition of what systems engineering or systems education adds to the engineering domain writ large. Okay. Oh, and here's the differentiating between systemic and systematic. Okay, so systematic, one way to look at it is sort of the traditional process approach of systems engineering. Okay, whereas systemic is a holistic systems thinking regime, right? System dynamics, fuzzy problem framing, formulation, structure, etc. Okay, so that just differentiates between the 2, and it's really you need sort of both, right? I think one of the reasons why systems engineering has we call them the SE antibodies, right? For that the other engineering disciplines have, is because they say, oh, you guys are just paper. You're just process only, right? And so, but it's necessary, right? It's part of it. But then you have, a true systems engineer also takes a holistic approach. So you need both. Okay. Oh, there we go. Wait a minute. Now I went. Okay. It gets behind. Okay, so here's so if you go over there to chart number 2, we had these sets of targets, if you will, or target stakeholder categories. And we put national engineering societies in agencies and their analogous industrial associations including accrediting bodies. Okay, so that's just one big category. We lumped them all together. First we had them separate, and then we kind of put them all together. And then our second set were deans, chairs, deans of engineering departments, chairs, and then the professors that actually do the teaching. And then of those two, the beneficiaries are the parents, the students, and the employers. The parents because their children aren't living with them when they're 30. The students because they get a good job, and the employers because they get fresh outs. We call, at least at Johns Hopkins, we call them fresh outs when you hire a fresh out right out of college, and they have the characteristics you need to do your job. And so the general notion is in those top two, you have the nudge strategy. Facilitate progress on existing interest within these different things, right? Because they kind of share some of our interests, some of our same goals, if you will, or at least they understand it, within and between the categories. And then you nudge that, right, with some added resources, and we'll talk about some of those. Okay? Anything that the group wants to add? We're okay? Okay. Now, so now we're going to drill down, and we're going to look at that first category. Okay, and the first step, assess the landscape. What's the, because it's a pretty big landscape, right, of all of these other engineering societies and agencies and associations. Understand what language that they now have in their vision statements, their purpose statements, their charter, right, that intersect, that agree with our value statement, if you will, and other resources that support our value statement. Okay, for example, if you go to the ABET educational objectives, A through K, and somebody in my group helped me out. What was it? It was C. Oh, I wrote it down. Okay, thank you. C, H, and K that are actually SE related. Now they don't say systems engineering, but they say systems, right, or a system approach. There's one on modeling, which is obviously very important, or tools actually. And so if you look at those educational objectives, and so we have some thoughts about how might we, if you can't beat them, join them kind of thing, how might we utilize that, right, to influence, if you will, a whole slew of stakeholders, right? Everybody has ABET accreditation, if they're anybody, well, except unless you're Harvard or something, but where you don't need to be accredited, right? So after we do that, we have INCOSA liaisons to some of these organizations, but not all. Okay, and then so we'd like to work with these men and women to help establish and look at the relationship between our goals of the academic forum and what they do with these because I know we have folks with ABET, right, and other associations. That includes ASEE. By the way, we'll talk about that too later on. Okay. And then where these relationships don't exist, we have to establish them. That's a recommendation we have to give to INCOSE, right? To actually make the MOA or MOU, whatever you want to do. So if a gap exists between the organizations and our value statement, okay, if that gap, then the goal is to achieve their buy-in on the value statement, the value proposition, within their context. We're not going to tell them what to believe in, but within their context, right? And define the steps that's needed to accomplish that. Okay? And sustain the relationship. Okay. So the second was the professor. And that's where the rubber meets the road, right? And that's probably the hardest, most difficult, most important person, if you will, that you have to influence to get to insert systems education into a non-system engineering course, right? And so we made this force field over here. Don't expect you to read it, but I'll just mention a few things. So the force field, what are the things that negatively influence the non-system engineering professor to adopt this, and what are the things that could be a positive influencer? So we're engineers, so it was really easy for us to come up with all the negative things first. So So we did that, right? The lack of knowledge, for what is systems engineering, time constraint, right? Or another way to look at that is say, look, if I have to do this, if I have to add this to I don't have enough time to teach what I need to teach. And so you want me to teach more? That kind of thing. Fear of the unknown. And, limited literature for what is systems engineering. And I saw it last night on the Group 2, needed system engineering for dummies, right? They're kind of a short, concise. I think in our group we had CBOC for dummies, because CBOC is this huge body of knowledge, right? And so, and I've actually given that to a few engineers, say, oh, what is system engineering? Oh, here it is. Go to the link for CBOC. And they, 5 minutes later they come back and they say, no. So you need something like a CBOC for dummies. So some of the positive things, INCOSE should have a paper, a white paper or some, of all the success stories of what system engineering provides to these professors of electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, etc. Maybe we could, you show them that their students are better engineers somehow, right? Guest lecturers from INCOSE, right, could go out, go to the university, go to, and actually say, here's the value of systems engineering. Appropriate course material, and I think that workshop 2 is going to talk about that, I believe, right? A package of materials? Yeah, but anyway, so this is where, I noticed that a lot of things over here and the positive things you guys are talking about, so I think that that's all good. Tenure incentives. Well, that would be good, right? If the dean or the chair said, hey, you have to do this in order for us to get ABET accreditation, I'm just hypothesizing here, then they'll go ahead and do that. Okay? Let's see. And an SE INCOSE sponsored workshop for professors. How about that, right? So those are so there's a whole list of things there that I didn't want to take the time to copy that over here. So any questions or comments about that? Yes. Yes. Well, just on this chart, I have 3 more charts.
You mentioned ABET.
Yes.
So if ABET was going to include a new criterion to fulfill, how do you influence ABET to do that?
You don't need a new criteria, but I'll show you. We've got a chart. Okay.
You got a chart for that?
Yes, I do. Okay, so characteristic employers wish that their new hires possessed. Okay, they're fresh outs, right? And so we have some of them over here. Problem formulation, understanding system requirements, stakeholder status for achieving requirements, comfortable communicating across domains, which, by the way, goes also with ABET D, because ABET criteria D is to be able to work comfortably in multidisciplinary teams. Okay? General awareness of system management, system versus subsystem trades, right? In other words, if you're working on especially the fresh outs, right? They're working on a very small component or subsystem, and they want to build a Cadillac, right? So they do, but that may result in a suboptimal system, right? So they have to learn how to do those trades. Modeling, the whole field of modeling, right? Okay, and comfortable or proficient in documentation. Folks aren't like, especially fresh outs, right? So those are the kinds of things. And so a question we ask here is, how can INCOSE help here? We didn't actually come up with a recommendation on that. It would just be nice if they could. Okay, so I think that other groups had characteristics as well. So we can compare. Okay, so implementation ideas. So here you go. So ABET they have 2 symposiums a year, and they have a large number of workshops all around the country. Because everybody, like I say, there's 11,000 schools who need ABET accreditation every 5 years, and so that's a big audience, right? And so they have these workshops to say, well, here's what criteria A, B, C, D mean. What if we provided for, say, criteria D or C or H, some system engineering, systems thinking examples that they could provide in their workshops? Could we do that? I don't know the answer. Something to explore. So that's So Len, that's how you could, influence ABET. Now, again, you wouldn't change the criteria, right? Because
Well, we might want to.
No, we actually, we started out thinking about that, and then we brought it up, and we didn't put it in the presentation. But it's really impressive, the language they already have in the A through K. It really covers this stuff that we should want to have in there. It's just a question of putting some content behind it, rather than.
right, a double E professor would look at those criteria much differently than anyone in this room. We would put it with our Kalman filter, system engineering, systems thinking filter on it, and a double E wouldn't see that. A double E would think, oh, I know what that means. And maybe he or she does within their context. And so I think what the NCOSE goal should be is to enlarge their context. Which then, one way to do that is to enlarge ABET's context. Maybe. So, okay. Develop a central repository of systems educational information. That should be maybe a chapter or an appendix in CBOC or maybe Gracie, or I don't know where you put it, but anyway. And so you guest speakers, they could be, here's an idea too that we talked about, MOOCs, right? Let's build a system engineering, introduction to system engineering MOOC, whatever it is, whatever. And, really flashy, kind of, free. Everybody could just get in there and do it. Yes?
So at our Cal Poly, if we're starting a new master's, we started a student division, and it's probably the largest student division anywhere. There's been a lot of students in it. And it was interesting, the students began by asking, what is systems engineering? And they were general engineering students, but we hadn't started our systems engineering major yet. So it was very interesting that they came up with YouTube things, all kinds of things.
Put the microphone in his face.
They came up with all kinds of things trying to deal with what is systems engineering.
Yes.
And so that speaks to this.
Yes.
That means there isn't one place or a really established place to go to find out what it is.
Right.
Which is amazing when you have an organization of 11,000 people. And
But we've only been around for 25 years.
Oh, is that all?
Okay. So.
I'm older than that.
Yeah. But think how long physics has been around. I mean, come on. So, okay.
What
So.
is physics, right?
Well, I don't know. So, what's the value proposition for physics? That's a good question. We should make them answer that, but they don't have to. But we do. All right. Focus. We should have focused ASEE coordination, right? I mean, okay. So, what do I mean by focused? All right. Well, so workshop surveys. So you have every workshop you do on this, have a little survey real quickly of all the people that are in there. Say, do you have any systems educational material within your projects? Or anything like that. Just yes, no, very short, 3-4 sentences, and they say no, 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 yes, yes, yes. At least we get an idea for it, right? Wouldn't be scientifically based, but at least you get an idea. We have a traditional training workshop on system engineering. Can you do that at ASEE? We should be able to, right? So that's something I do. We should, as a body here, a group of people. What is the journal? Is it JEE, or what is the journal of?
Journal of Engineering Education.
So JEE. All right. So I have. This is terrible. I've never looked at JEE, and yet I call myself an engineering educator. Isn't that terrible? That's really bad. So anyway, so bad on me. I taught chemistry for about 20 years and never looked at it, chemical, until I decided to publish in it, and then I did, right? So, but anyway, so I'm going to look at that and maybe come up with a couple of papers on how we do things at Johns Hopkins to incorporate system engineering, across the curriculum. If we, So anyway, so that's something that we could all do. Okay.
Well, and you can also, ASE has also collaborated, like with the CERF one year when they were doing a task on capstones and SE, and we had them do papers and come and do sessions at the conference. So you can also do papers for the conference.
Right. Yeah. Oh, I see.
Not just for
but do it for the conference too.
Yes.
And then if you go to a nice place like, Seattle this time, but maybe Hawaii next month. What's that?
New Orleans next year.
New Orleans. Okay.
New Orleans next year is the answer.
Okay. As long as they're not underwater, we'll be okay. All right. Okay, wrap it up. Okay, so, well, remember, I started at 10 after. Okay, okay, all right. So we've only got 2 more charts. Okay.
10 plus 20, 30.
Okay, got it. So we think that CBOC and Gracie should reflect the value statement and have a list, either, somewhere, maybe all throughout, but at least in some places, and then, have a chapter, appendix or something on emerging good practices. And that was my last chart. I'm sorry. I'm done.
Thank you very much.
Okay. So it's early. Look at that. 8 minutes early.
Why don't we do a summary?